Hey there guys, and welcome back to Tech Easily. So this is my third video on linking HTML to MySQL database using PHP. Now in my previous two videos, I have gone through some basics. I've introduced XAMPP to you guys. I've shown you how to create forms and the input types, the post and get methods, the HTTP post and get methods. And like always, those videos will be linked in the description box down below. But for now, in today's video, I'm going to go through MySQL. So first, I've made a presentation. I'll go through that. Then I will be talking about PHP MyAdmin, so that user interface. I'll show you how to create a database in MySQL. I'll be showing you guys how to create tables for that database in MySQL. I'll also be showing you how to add in columns for that table, and all of this information will be related to the form that we created in our previous video. So my database, my tables, and my columns will be linked to that form. And today's video is actually a really interesting one. So if you guys want to know how to do all of this stuff in MySQL, then please keep on watching. The first thing I'm going to be talking to you guys about is MySQL in PHP MyAdmin. So if I show you guys really quickly, it's this page over here. So when I start XAMPP and I also start Apache and also MySQL server like I showed you in my first video, and you click on admin, then this page opens up. I'll actually go through that really quickly later on in this video as well. So this is what I'm going to be talking to you guys about first. So PHP MyAdmin, we can manage databases, columns, tables, relations, users, and indexes. And I'll actually be going through that once we get to the creating a database part. So I'll go through how you can actually create, delete, update databases, tables, even columns. You can edit them. You can add in primary keys to your tables. I'll show you how to do all of that in a second. You can also import data from SQL, so that's really useful too. You can browse, create, alter, and drop tables. And all of this is going to be done through this interface. It's actually really straightforward and easy to use once I get to this. But for now, let's move on to MySQL databases. So now guys, let's talk a little bit about MySQL databases. So in a MySQL database, data is kept in tables. And this basically means that it's stored inside rows and columns, and this data is mostly related. So for example, the form that we created in our previous video, the database I would create for that form for my whole website would be Tech Easily. And then the table I would create would be register or sign up. And then, for example, the data in that table would be similar. So like we had name, we had age, email address, password. So if I open up the code that I had for my last video, so you can see name, age, email, password. So those things are similar, and they would be stored in our sign up table. We wouldn't want to have like a random table, like a random column in this table, for example, food. You would create a different table for similar items. And also, databases are good for keeping information in a structured manner. Okay, so next we are going to talk a little bit about MySQL tables. So guys, each table in your database, it should have a primary key. Basically, it should have an ID column. So basically in the database and the table I'm going to create in a little while, I'm going to be putting in my primary key, and I'm actually going to show you how to auto increment your primary key as well. Primary key is really important. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on too when I show you how to put that in. Next, we have column data types, and these tell us what type of data can actually be stored inside of it. So SQL actually has three main data types, and these include numeric, text, or it's also known as string sometimes, and then we have date and time. And again, I'll go through that in much more detail once I go to demonstrate how to put. Okay guys, so let's get to the fun part where I'm going to demonstrate all of this stuff to you guys. So first of all, let's open up our code again and let's see what the column names for our table are going to be. So the first one will be name, the second one is going to be age, the third one's going to be email, and the fourth one is going to be password. So you would think that we would have 4 columns in our table, but actually guys, we are going to be having 5 columns in our table. And this is because, if you guys remember what I said, we have to put in our ID, which is also known as the primary key. And the reason why it's so important is because a primary key can distinguish all table records. And another important thing you guys want to remember is that it cannot contain null values. And this is because, you guys, just say you have 2 records of a single column and they both have a null value. The column values are not considered equal, and this is basically the reason. Another thing is that one table can only have 1 primary key, and that's a really important thing to remember as well. So now that we know exactly what column names and what columns we're creating and a little bit about primary keys, I'm actually going to start my XAMPP and then we'll get on to creating our database. Okay guys, so as I mentioned in my first video of the series, that you must have XAMPP installed in your machines in order to be able to go on and do everything in MySQL, and that's why it was my first video actually. So now that you have opened up XAMPP, if you guys remember from my first video that you need to start both Apache and MySQL. So let's go ahead and click start on our Apache one. Again, it tells you the ports and then MySQL, and you click admin. Now here you can see it has opened up PHP MyAdmin, and that's basically how you get to it. Okay guys, so let's quickly talk about where everything is placed here. So on your left hand side down here, you have a list of all the databases that are in your system. So if you click on the expand or collapse, you can actually see the table or tables that will be in your database. So just say we have this one, we actually can see the functions and procedures as well. You can see the tables, and if you click on expand, you can see the list of tables that are in this database too. You can see the views. So basically you can even go across and see like that, but everything that you have, it does come with an option of edit, drop, which basically means deleting or exporting, and I'll show you guys how to do that for your database. Now here's one I created earlier just for the purposes of showing you guys how we can go on and delete a table or also your whole database. So here's one that I created known as Tech Easily, and we're going to go and create that in a little bit. But if I want to drop my sign up table, which you can see is inside my Tech Easily database, all I have to do is click on the drop button here. Basically means delete, and it's going to ask you to confirm it. So you're about to destroy a complete table. Do you really want to execute drop table sign up? So this part here, guys, this is an actually SQL statement, and this is what's going to be performed in the background when you basically click OK for your table to be deleted. And we do want to delete this table, so I'm going to click OK. So now you can see my database, Tech Easily. There's no tables in this database. It has been deleted. So that's how you go on and delete a table in your database. Next, you guys, if you want to delete a database, all you have to do is click on databases on the top here and just say I want to delete my Tech Easily database. You can see a list of all the databases you have. You want to tick on the database you want to delete, and then again it's the same. You're going to click on drop. You're going to get the same SQL statement, but this time, if you noticed, instead of table it's going to say drop database, And if you want to go ahead, you just click OK again. And you can see once it has happened successfully, it does give you a little toast saying that it has happened successfully. Now that we know how to drop tables and databases, let's go and create our database. So you can see a little new button here at the top of all the databases you guys have. You're going to click on New, and here it's going to give you a little field, and in this you can type in the name of your database. And usually this would probably be the name of your website, so I had Tech Easily here. I'm just going to put my website, and you can change this around to whatever you like, and you're going to click Create. Now here you can see that the database that we just created called My Website has appeared, and you notice that it's all in lowercase, so it didn't matter that I put in uppercase letters because it's going to convert them all into lowercase. And you guys probably noticed this, the database names go down in alphabetical order, but if I just click on to my website, now it says that there's no tables found in this database, and it allows you to put in a table name and put in the number of columns you want. Again, if we look at our form, it was a sign up form, so you can say that the name of your database is sign up. If it's for registration, you can put in register as your name, it doesn't really matter. And then you can see that you have to specify the number of columns you want. And again, if we refer back to this, we already know that we require 5 columns. So let's go back inside and change that to 5. You can also type that in and just click. Okay guys, so this takes us to a very important page. You have to specify the names of the columns here and also the data types. So what I'm going to do is go through the data types that we have. Now I previously talked a little bit about this, but now I'm going to go through some slides first, and then we'll come back and fill out these because I feel like it's important to know why we're doing what we're doing to actually understand it better. Go button. Okay guys, so the first one that we're going to be talking about, the first data type, is string or text, and as it's implicated by the name, we use this to store text values. But one important thing to remember is that it cannot exceed a maximum length, and strings can be used to store just plain text and also binary data such as files or images, for example. And then I'll just go through this. So we can use a type called char, and that's a fixed section from 0 to 255 characters long. The next one we have is varchar, and that's a variable from 0 to 255. Now this, you guys, is probably the most common one that's used, the one that I've used the most as well. And it can be used to store both letters and numbers. Then some other ones like tiny text, text blob, medium text, medium blob, long text, and long blob. I'm not going to go through all of these, but one thing to note is, so this is a large object that can hold a variable amount of data. So things like your images, you would use a blob data type. Again, if I go through every single one of them, the video will be too long, so you can pause it and go through these yourself. You can Google them up. But again, the most common ones are probably the top ones. Okay guys, so the second data type that we have is date or time. And like the name suggests, this is used to display date or time inside of your website. So if you use just the date as your data type, it will be displayed in this order. So the year will go first, then your month, and then your date. If you use DateTime, the year will go first, then your month, then your date, your hours, minutes, and seconds. If you use a timestamp, and this is common as well, you would see your year first, your month, your date, your hours, minutes, and seconds. And then if you use the time data type, you would just see the hours, minutes, and seconds. So depending on the format of the date or time you want to display in your website, you can choose from one of these and put that in. Oh, and also there is a support range from the minimum to the maximum. For example, the year, it would go from a specific minimum year to a specific maximum year. Now that's something that you'll just have to look up yourself to see what it supports and what it doesn't. Okay, so the third data type that we have is numeric. So we can have an exact number data type, or we can have approximate ones. For example, the one that's mostly commonly used from here would be int or float, double, decimal. These ones are probably the most commonly used. So like float, it's a small approximate number with a floating decimal point. A double is a large number with a floating decimal point. And then a decimal is a double stored as a string. And then int, which is probably the most commonly used one, and it stands for integer, which is a whole number. And one thing to note is MySQL actually supports all standard SQL integer types. So as you can see, the small int, the tiny int, the big int, the medium int. Again, I'm not going to go into that much detail, but you guys can get a basic concept of what is used mostly in these three data types for MySQL. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit better about data types in MySQL, what we're going to do is go back into this create table page. So just where we left off, the name of my first column is going to be ID, like I told you guys, and this is going to be our primary key. And this is going to be of the type int. And if we go across here, I want you to scroll across and you can see it says AI, and if you hover over this, it's actually auto increment. Okay, so I'm just going to tick this here. And it says that it's the primary key, and that's what we want here, and now it's being auto incremented. And the reason, you guys, why you want the primary key to auto increment is because it allows a unique number to be created or generated when a new record is put inside your table. So every time you want to add a new record into your database, it creates it automatically. Okay guys, so now that we know a little bit about the data types that go in here, let's actually go in and fill in the columns for our table. So the first one, as we discussed, would be ID, and the type by default is selected to be int, and that's what we are going to keep it. Now, like I said, I want to auto increment this primary key or the ID. So if you go across, so scroll across, you're going to see a thing called AI. And if you hover over this, you can see that it says auto increment. So we want to auto increment our primary key. We click on this little button here, and you can see that you can create an index, full text, unique, and primary. So primary is the one we want, so we're going to select that. And the reason, you guys, we want a primary key to be auto incremented is because it allows for a unique number to be created when you actually add a new record into your table. So this is really important, and you do want to get into the habit of putting it to auto increment. Now the second column we had was name, so I'm going to put that in, and the type for the name will be varchar. And just like I told you guys, you have to specify the length, the maximum length of characters you want for this type. So for example, I'm going to say 20 is the maximum, but again, you can change this to whatever you like. Our third column was age, and by default int is selected here, so there's nothing else I have to do here. My fourth column I had was email. So put that in. Again, I'm going to use varchar for email or variable character. And this time I'm going to specify the length to be 40 characters, but you can change that to whatever you like. And then the last column name we had was password. So put that in. Again, it's going to be a varchar, and just say I'm going to set that to 30. That can depend on how long you want the user to have their passwords, how many characters. So again, that's totally up to you. Now if you scroll a bit down, you can see the save button here. If you're happy with all your columns and their types, you can go ahead. A thing to note is if I don't specify the length or value for a varchar, for example, if I leave that out, you click save, you're going to get an error. It's not going to let you proceed. So you must fill in the lengths or values for your varchars in order to be able to proceed. And that's a mistake I've seen kids make. So just make sure you put that in, and they don't understand how to proceed on. So just make sure you do that. So once our table has been created, you guys, you can see the table structure. You can see the names of your columns. You can see the data types. You can see their lengths. You can also see that you're a primary key. You can see the little key beside this column in ID. So you know that this is your primary key. That's how you distinguish it. And you can also see that it's being auto-incremented. Now if you look on the left side over here, you can see that inside my database, my table has appeared. Now if I was to create a new table called, for example, user, and I wanted to store their information, all I have to do is click on new, and you can literally just keep on adding in tables like that. It takes you back to this page. You can give the table name, the columns, and everything that we did before. But let's go back. Okay, so over here, you guys, just say you wanted to add in a new column. You forgot to put in phone, and you want telephone. You want to put that in to your table, so your sign up table. All you have to do is, you can see at the bottom here, you can see how many columns you want to add, and you can also see when you want to put this column in. So you can put it at the beginning of the table, after your ID, your name, age, email, or password. Just say I want to put it in after password. I'm just going to click this and click save. Once you press go, it's going to take you to a page that was similar to before when we added in columns. So, but this time we specified that we only wanted one, so it gave us an option for one. Let's just put in phone here. The type, I'm going to say big int, and then just save it. So here you can see a message saying table sign up has been altered successfully, and it gives you the SQL statement again. So alter table, sign up, add phone, and this is the SQL statement that got performed in the background. So if we look at the structure of our table now, we can see that phone has been added in after password. So that's basically how you can add in more columns to any part of your table at any given time. You can also edit them. So just say you don't want this to be called name, you want a first name and a second name, so separate columns for both. You can just edit this by clicking on change. And since we don't have phone in our form, I'm actually just going to delete this, because in our next video we're going to be using this table and database. So if you want to drop a column, just click on drop and OK. And here you can see it has gotten rid of it. Okay, so that's it, you guys. I think I've covered all the bases here, from creating tables, adding columns, editing, deleting, auto-incrementing for the primary key. So what we're going to be doing from this video onwards, the code that I have for my form from my last video, I'm going to be using this. I'm going to be using PHP to make a connection for my HTML page, my HTML form, to be connected to this database. and we will be storing information from our forms inside this database and inside our sign up table. So now it's going to be coming all together. Okay, so that's it for today's video, you guys. I know we covered a lot of information, but it was all really important. So about MySQL, the tables, the databases, how to create them, how to edit, delete them, how to put in your columns, how to specify the data types and the difference between those data types, and then how to edit or add in more columns. Now, hopefully you guys found PHP MyAdmin user interface easy to use. It's actually not that bad. You just need to get used to making your way around. And once you get that into your head, it's actually really easy. And you can go ahead and create as many databases or tables that you want. Just keep some key concepts in mind, like primary key on how to auto-increment it. That's very important, and that's universally applicable to all your tables. So now in my next video, we're going to be going through PHP. I'll go through some basics of PHP first, and then I'll show you how to connect that to your database and connect that to your forms. And PHP is actually a really interesting language as well, so please keep an eye out for that. Until we code again, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a big thumbs up, and please feel free to leave any suggestions or recommendations you guys may have in the comment section down below, and I will try to get to them as quickly as I can, and I will see you all in my next video.